Welcome to Story-Based Leadership, how effective business leaders communicate during times of crisis. Let me first explain to you what story-based leadership is. I go all around the world as a keynote speaker and executive coach where I teach leaders how to use their story to inspire their team, their company, or their country. So with this presentation, we are in a very unique time. So I'm going to share with you how do you effectively communicate like someone like a Jamie Dimon. So confident leaders are really forged through crisis and chaos. You're going to be remembered through not just the words you say, how you communicate, but the actions that you convey. Lastly, how do you actually acknowledge and reassure your teams? And finally, ultimately, it's about building better teams now. And how do you listen better during this time of crisis? So let's give a quick history lesson. During the Great Depression and World War II, a lot of unfortunate things happened. But there are two US presidents. One is forgotten, one is remembered. The man on the left is Herbert Hoover. He started his presidency at the beginning of the Great Depression in 1929, ended it in 1933. FDR, who's known by just 3 letters, started his presidency in the US at the height of the Great Depression and ended it during World War II. Now again, 2 leaders, same crisis, one is remembered, one is not. So you have a very clear opportunity right now. If you communicate with confidence, if you reassure people, if you acknowledge what's going on and take bold action, you will be like FDR, remembered decades and decades later. Or if you don't know how to communicate well effectively during crisis, you might be this guy named Herbert Hoover, who is a US president, but everyone has essentially forgotten about who he is. So let's talk about what's going on right now. We have over 3 million cases that are tested, 200,000+ people who have passed away. Now, yes, that's unfortunate. Yes, that's sad. But when you look at the entirety, in the US alone, we have 400,000 deaths a year just based on preventable diseases based on smoking. Overall, there's 55 million people who die in the world, and that's with no pandemic, no earthquakes, whatever it might be. But the point is, yes, it's sad. Yes, it's scary. But even if you look at the Spanish flu 100+ years ago, close to 50+ million people passed away, and that was 1/3 of the population. So it is an important thing to recognize that this is a concern. It's a new virus. We don't know what's going to happen. But if you look at past history, this is nothing new. Again, past history in the last 100 years, but if you look at the past 200,000 years, there will be other earthquakes and viruses and all these different things that happen. So just put it in the context that, yes, it is a crisis, it's current, but in the course of 200,000 years of our human history, it's not going to be that big of a deal in life. Now, let's get a little bit more detailed. There have been over 20 million jobs in just the US, so clearly hundreds of millions of jobs will be lost during this time. In Latin America alone, it will be the single biggest disaster economically based on a report from the United Nations. Now, that being said, this is the slide. This is the actual content of this presentation that I really want you to screenshot because it's so important. So Jamie Dimon is one of the most respected bankers in the world. He has really shown us how we can be leaders, how we can be effective. I'm literally going to dissect this for all of you. So this is actually just one article, by the way. This is the best time for you to get free advertising because companies like Coca-Cola, Apple, Nike, they spend hundreds of billions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars on advertising to promote their brand, to promote their cause. Jamie Dimon goes on various newscasts reports right now in articles. This one's at USA Today, in NBC and Fox, whatever news channel there is around the world. And he conveys a sense of, you know what, first I'm going to acknowledge what's going on. He talks about how we will have a bad recession, but he also talks about how it's connected to the 2008 financial crisis relative to similarity. And he does that because, as you all know, markets get shaky when there's uncertainty. So first he acknowledges what's going on, but he also says that, hey, look, it's going to be like 2008. He doesn't know that, but by referencing that analogy, he's at least saying, okay, it's not going to be as bad. But most importantly, he says, okay, we're going to be a stronger country. So he first starts with acknowledging what's going on and then has a stronger country later on. Now, it's important to reference the sequence of how he says these things because we just started by reassuring the country saying, we're going to be a great country now. what is that based on? First, he has to acknowledge what we're going through, referencing an analogy about 2008, and then saying we're going to go through a strong sequence or stronger country. So that's important about the sequence of communicating. So he has the words he's using. He also uses we twice in that opening paragraph. So it's not I am going to help out people, we. So it's about being community-based. And then the second part is about how he says, we're going to work together with the government. Now, what banker, what business person, what capitalist will say, we're going to work together with a government? Well, Jamie Dimon is. And not only that, he says we're going to address these severe economic challenges for the borrower's people, the people. He's literally reaching out to the people. This guy's a billionaire. He's one of the most successful, affluent, influential leaders in the world, but he's recognizing all the borrowers. He wants to see their face. He's really building empathy. So in those just two paragraphs, he's acknowledging what's going on, not being, oh, this is not going to be this is going to be a bad thing, acknowledging that, but he's also reassuring by saying we. And then he goes even deeper by saying, we're going to work together with the government by creating these and participating, using these verbs like participate. And it's all about these action verbs, about participating, getting involved. And lastly, he takes bold action. He doesn't just acknowledge. He doesn't just reassure. He's not just building a team or building empathy. He's like, you know what? We're going to show, not tell you how we're going to help you. Literally, we're going to have these grace periods. We're going to defer some of these loans. So this is a perfect example. This is like the Dali, the Da Vinci, the Michelangelo of speaking and communicating with both words and how you convey a sense of acknowledgement, reassurance, and ultimately how you can be more effective as a communicator. And mind you, this is not just what he's saying in his annual report to his employees as he's a public figure and a global figure. All of us will read about this. And so you have an opportunity, because ultimately what Jamie Dimon is doing, he's not just allaying the concerns of his actual customers and his team and his company. He's allaying the concerns of the whole country and the world. And for you, I want you to recognize the end result of effective communication is that he will build massive long-term consumer loyalty. And this is why. Everyone's afraid. Everyone's scared. Everyone is panicking. What does Jamie Dimon do? Acknowledge what's going on, reassure them, this is what we're doing. And again, if you listen to all the words he's saying, this literally is Michelangelo da Vinci, because companies like Nike and Coca-Cola, they spend hundreds of millions or billions of dollars on advertising. And if you're a leader, why aren't you reaching out to your press? Why aren't you going out to various presses like haro.com, H-A-R-O? It's a place where you can get free press. So whether you're putting out press releases or going on news, imagine you being that leader in your country saying, we are the shining example, just like Australia is, just like Germany is, just like South Korea is, just like certain cities or states in the US are. But as a leader, you have the ability to either look at this as, oh my gosh, I'm scared, I'm panicky, I'm fearful, or you can say, I'm going to be a global leader. And I'm going to use the words that Jamie Dimon has. This is why I love working with clients. I work with C-level executives all around the world to help them craft the message, to pick the right words, to pick the sequence, and ultimately, what is the main theme you're sharing, which is always about acknowledging, assuring, and aspiring to be a more hopeful leader. And this is why Jamie Dimon is perfect at what he does. And the end result is when you look forward, what Jamie Dimon is doing, he's not just reassuring his company, he's literally building multi-generational consumers. Think about this. He's on the news all the time. Everyone's afraid. Advertising works by having an emotional appeal. When everyone's afraid and fearful, he's like, I am a shining hope. I am the savior. I'm going to help the country and the world. And so you can have that same thing, because these are just words. You can learn how to use these words, which is what I do for executives around the world. And so just keep in mind that this is the best opportunity for you to communicate so that you can build long-term consumer loyalty, not just for your current customers, because that grandfather that is your customer right now has a son or daughter who has another son or daughter. So you're literally going multi-generational, because as all these people are fearful, you will be that leader that effectively communicates how powerful and important it is to be calm, to reassure, and to be that bold, confident example based on the words you use and how you use it and how you communicate those words in a sequence. So just remember that acknowledge, reassure, and take action. Jamie Dimon is a perfect example. Please reach out to me if you want to learn more, because I'd love to help you or get your feedback. Now, this is why this is the best time to have and build a better team. Your employees don't have excuses now. They can't say, hey, I'm on the phone, or I'm on a flight, or I'm traveling to some other place. No one's traveling, at least for now. As soon as countries start opening up, which they already started doing, you're going to miss out on this opportunity because, as I showed you in the slide, 185 countries are all involved with this crisis. Well, how many times in human history, there's never been a time in human history where everyone is home. You can't have this time go to waste. This is the best opportunity for you to be a leader and communicate that by building a better team because they're all home. When people are scared, what do? You have to convey a sense of reassurance and empathy. So I talk about team building. And team building, based on MIT's Human Dynamics Laboratory, they studied this. They had a 7-year study where they studied thousands of employees across multiple industries around the world. They actually put electronic badges on these people, and they studied 100 data points. And they found that it wasn't so much what they said, though, that's important. It's how they said it. So the patterns of communication in terms of how they said the words literally affected their team building skills by 50% more effective. It was more important by the person's intelligence. It was more important than the personality, the skills they had, or even the substance of discussion, where ultimately how you communicate is more important than all these things combined, based on MIT's Human Dynamics Laboratory and Science, where they studied literally for 7 years, thousands of people, electronic badge, 100 data points. Just know that you can learn how to communicate if you get trained by this. It's so important that you understand this based on science. Now let's dive in deeper. This is what I coach and train leaders all around the world. Yes, you know it's the words, body language, and tone, but do you know how to do it? So for instance, with the words, Jamie Dimon first acknowledges that this is what's going on. He stresses things like at the end that we will be a stronger country. Now let's talk about the tones. If I were coaching Jamie Dimon right now and he was going to rehearse this in front of the global audience, I would talk about how the beginning part, the tone of voice, is empathetic. We are going through a very tough time now, but it's going to be similar to the 2008 recession. But we believe that we will get better and we'll be a stronger country. Now, breaking it down, I started off more mild and being empathetic, and then I said, we're going to be a stronger country. Now, if you flip that around and I talk and just start off by saying, we're going through a tough time right now. It's going to be like the recession of 2008, but we will get through this and we'll have a stronger country. It doesn't have as much weight. So just on the sequence of how I said it and the tone of voice, you have to remember that it's not what you say, it's how you say it and words you stress. I stress words like, we will be a stronger country, not we will be a stronger country. So these are seemingly basic things, but I travel the world talking to executives around the world. I've been doing this for 20 years, and it really shocks me, frankly, about how many executives I see that are not very good communicators. I spoke at a keynote speech last year at a country in Europe. I'm not going to name names, but this head of state was not a great speaker. He didn't say anything that was of value. I don't even remember one word because his tone of voice was completely monotone. It's as if me saying, we are going through a crisis now, and it's like the 2008 recession, and though this is happening, we are in a good position, and therefore we're going to become a stronger country. Now, it might be obvious as I'm speaking to you, but I'm telling you, I meet so many executives that they're not taught to speak. But if you look at someone like a Warren Buffett, this man learned public speaking when he was 20, and now he's one of the most successful people in the world. So just keep in mind the tone of voice you use, the body language and the words, because it's so important to be a better, effective communicator. And when it's all said and done, you will have 3 types of employees. You'll have the person that's running off to finding toilet paper. You'll have the delusional person who thinks that this is just a political thing. And you'll have Jamie Dimon, who's the rational optimist, where ultimately the people in Florida, for instance, right now, some of the beaches are open, and they're like, I don't see a virus. It doesn't matter what they see or think they see. Do you believe in air? Do you believe in water? Do you believe in gravity? These are science-based things. So just know that this is a virus that's dangerous. So make sure that when you talk to people, if they're more primal fear, just be more listening and empathetic. And if they're ultimately more delusional, you have to be careful. And lastly, rational optimists, do what Jamie Dimon does. The last thing I'm going to share is that you have to listen better. I was born and raised in New York. I'm American. I speak Chinese. My parents from Hong Kong. And to listen in Chinese means that you're listening not just with your ears, because Chinese has different symbols that when you combine the symbols, it means something completely different. So in this case, there's 6 different elements of the symbol, and ultimately your ears are what you hear, your king is you're respecting the person, the eyes are what you see, you have one undivided attention, and ultimately you have to listen with your heart. So when you really want to listen and communicate, you have to listen with your ears, your eyes, and your heart. So hopefully this was helpful. Definitely reach out to me if you have questions, concerns, or if I can help you. But really, to be like Jamie Dimon, you have to acknowledge, reassure, and learn how to communicate with some of the empathy using your words, your body language, and your tone. Everyone, we're going to get through this together. Those who stay together, rise together. Have a great day.